Hello there. Welcome in to a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which are both free to download, both free to use, and both sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could call or text into that number. Producer extraordinaire Ray Dominguez standing by, eagerly awaiting your correspondence. Remember what I said yesterday about the Nuggets version of death taxes, where we say that there are multiple things that are, no matter what, that you always have to deal with the Denver Nuggets. Almost every game is Murray flurry, Jokic triple-double, and an injury. And we've got updates on the latest two as the Nuggets limp to the finish line of this regular season. I'll start with the good news. Tim Hardaway Jr. was practicing today. So that is like legitimately good news because of the way he's been playing. He's if the Nuggets are going to win a title, Tim Hardaway is going to have something to say about it. I really believe that. So he needs to be healthy. The other one is not as good of news, as Peyton Watson is listed as week to week with the hamstring injury. David Adelman sharing today that there's optimism that he will return by the end of the regular season. But when he says that, that just tells me you'll see Peyton Watson game one of the playoffs. But I'll allow myself to be wrong. If he shows up to get one game in before the playoffs, then maybe he does. But and both of those things are not terrible. Like, given what you have gone through as a Nuggets fan in terms of injuries, one guy being week to week with an outside chance he returns in a week, and one guy that was hurt the other night right back out on the practice floor, like, as far as on the Nuggets scale here, pretty good news. But born out of the, I don't know if it was really born out now that I'm thinking about it, but it just something else Peyton Watson related has come up. Michael Scotto, who is an NBA insider, I believe he works for the Yes Network. So he would be somebody that is familiar with Cam Johnson and Cam Johnson's people. And he reported that the Denver Nuggets are getting ready to ensure that Peyton Watson does not leave. They want to sign him to a long-term extension. And then mentions in the same breath that could mean the end of Cam Johnson in Denver, and added that Cam Johnson, and this is where the time Michael Scotto and Cam Johnson spent together in Brooklyn is relevant. He's saying that Cam Johnson would like to go back to Phoenix. And why it's relevant is just because this is a guy who covered Cam Johnson closely while he was in Brooklyn. So I think there's validity to this. But I want to make one thing clear off the top here. The reason why Cam Johnson would be expendable if the Nuggets signed Peyton Watson is because the Nuggets would want to try and get out of the second apron. Given the rules when it comes to full bird rights and being a restricted free agent, the Nuggets, without doing anything, could pay Peyton Watson, match any offer Peyton Watson received, or give him a contract that his people, Rich Paul, agree to, and onward and upward. And you say, well, why don't they just do that? Well, because there are guys that are set to become free agents. Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown. And even if you don't want either one of them back, it puts the Nuggets in a similar bind as they have been the last couple of years where they really can't bring in anyone else. So you start to go through the roster and what it might look like. They wouldn't really be able to add anybody. So you'd be talking the starting five as it is now. Peyton Watson off the bench. You have Deron Holmes. Spencer Jones is in a similar situation as Peyton Watson, so let's just say you could bring him back. Zeke Naji, everybody's favorite Nugget. And you would be able to have like a KJ Simpson or David Roddy, the two-way guys. And that's it. With the assumption that Jonas Valanciunas is going to leave the team after this season. And Julian Strawther. Thank you, Ray. Still, not as good, not as deep as the team that the Denver Nuggets have right now. And then an injury happens, and then they're even in more of a bind. And let's not forget, too, what Josh Kroenke brought up, and Ray actually had to remind me of this the other day when we were having a similar conversation. Remember when Josh Kroenke talked about being in the second apron, and it would put him in a situation that he never wants to be in, that he would have to trade Nikola Jokic? Right? So that would be Josh Kroenke's thinking if the Denver Nuggets did not make a corresponding move. So in theory, they could keep both. In practice, they really can't. And I think you could be mad at the system, and you'd have every right to be, but you have to understand the Nuggets, where the Nuggets would be coming from. And I think we can all acknowledge that with the emergence of Peyton Watson, the idea that they're going to keep him, Cam Johnson, and Aaron Gordon moving forward, I think we all kind of understood that wasn't going to be the case. And you just pick who your preference is. Now, what I have said is you might add somebody, because I think that the Nuggets are looking at cutting costs even further. And that's where, as a fan, you might start to get rightly upset. You know, I think we understand the apron rules enough to understand that it would be a bad thing for the Denver Nuggets to be completely locked in to a roster that isn't even a full one without adding, you know, two-way contracts and things like that. We understand that. But to go a step further, because you don't want to pay a luxury tax, the first apron is not as restrictive. So, but you would still have to pay a tax. So if they made another move, which is where I say add one guy, then that would be that doesn't have the practical implications of being in the second apron. That's just a team looking to shed salary. And in a championship window with, stop me if you heard this one before, the best player in the world, that's not going to go over well with the fan base. That's what I think is going to happen, but there haven't been many indications either way. So back to Peyton Watson. Let's leave the extra cost-cutting move and put that to the side for now. Let's just take the idea of signing Peyton, essentially giving Peyton Watson the money that Cam Johnson would be owed, and then extending it out a number of years. I would caution the Denver Nuggets against that, because we saw this in the offseason with Christian Brown. All I think that the Nuggets should do is just don't rush to the altar here. Like, let the market decide here. If the Lakers are going to come in, and maybe they do, and then the Nuggets are faced with a real decision. But please just at least wait and see if other teams come calling. And I'm sure there will be. I just don't want them to sign Peyton Watson without actually testing him and the team, testing the market here. So that's the first thing. The second thing is back to Christian Brown. You better be really sure about Peyton Watson. Breakout seasons happen, and guys go on from that breakout season and just continue to be that player moving forward. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they play at another level because they are in a contract year. And the Denver Nuggets, Zeke Naji, congratulations, you're off the hook. The biggest albatross around the collective neck of the Denver Nuggets is now Christian Brown. He's been banged up this year. He's been wildly ineffective when he's been on the court. He is, and this is not just me speaking anecdotally, he has been statistically one of the worst shooters on open threes in the NBA this season. Now, this contract is long. Could this just be one of those years where even though Christian Brown has been on the court regularly, he's just not 100%? Maybe. But I was somebody who had my doubts about signing Christian Brown long-term before this season. So you have to be a little leery, I would think, of that swap, essentially. Let's say the Nuggets can only keep one of them, realistically. I might stick with Cam Johnson. I have more of a body of work here that I can go to and say Cam Johnson has shown more over the course of his career than Peyton Watson is. And let's also not forget, too, if you unload Cam Johnson, Peyton Watson is going in that, one of my favorite things to bring up, the Michael Porter box. You're going to put him in this role where he's not going to have the freedom that he had when he opened everyone's eyes. Peyton Watson as a bench player, if the Nuggets could afford it, I love it. But it's like the Christian Brown and KCP thing. You loved Christian Brown coming off the bench when they won a title. Have you loved him as much every year since? With his role expanded and with him being in the starting lineup? So if you're going to move out Cam Johnson to keep Peyton Watson right now, as much as I think I have a good grasp on what the future holds, I do not have a crystal ball. I don't know who's going to be available that you would put into that spot over Peyton Watson. It would be exactly the same thing as Calvin Booth did and tried to make the case with Christian Brown replacing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And now you're putting Peyton Watson, you're putting some constraints on. Defensively, I think Peyton Watson could absolutely continue to help you even in that spot. But look at the way that Cam Johnson has been playing lately. It took him a while to figure out his role. He's figured it out, and he's being impactful in that role. And there's something to be said. Even I understand that the Nuggets drafted Peyton Watson, but they did fire the guy that drafted Peyton Watson. So, the loyalty thing is great, but at the same time, the decision maker that that drafted him is gone. You're not beholden to carry out the bidding of Calvin Booth and make sure he's proven right. You're Ben Tenzer and John Wallace. This is your thing now. You should limit the loyalty that you have. I like the role that Peyton Watson is in now. And I know that Cam Johnson is capable of being productive in the role he has now. I don't know for sure, and I don't think that the Nuggets do either, whether Peyton Watson could fit into the role Cam Johnson has and be as productive. It's a big decision that the Denver Nuggets have to make here this coming up offseason, and they'll also have the postseason to further, if they're on the fence about it, to lean them one way or another. And you and I will do the same thing. If Peyton Watson recovers from this injury, is incredibly impactful, then it will be hard to tell him goodbye. But I think you have to think long and hard about it, because at the current moment in time, the extension with Christian Braun, which they could have waited to this offseason just like Peyton Watson, it doesn't look great right now. Two different players, but maybe a little restraint, a little bit more looking at it critically is a good idea, because it didn't seem like they had the patience and did that with Christian Braun, and now it doesn't look great. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. Would you want Peyton Watson or Cam Johnson moving forward on the Denver Nuggets? Nuggets and Spurs coming up tomorrow afternoon. That's a big one, and I think we're going to get the matchup that we want to see. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Stick with the NBA coming up next. The ESPN came out with its MVP straw poll. A couple of very interesting results, and a significant injury in the NBA, which may completely alter both the MVP race and the All-NBA first team. Drive Time Sports on this Friday here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. We may lament the Nuggets injuries around here this season, but there is a bigger picture at play here when it comes to the NBA as a whole. And it's the number of star players that just have not been on the court. And this goes back to, this is just the resumption of the conversation that we had late last year, really after Game 7 of the NBA Finals, right? Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton, already going into next year, two of the more promising teams, two teams that should be considered among the favorites to get out of the East and win an NBA title, we're not going to have their best players. Now, the Celtics obviously have dealt with it one way, and here they are, probably the team to beat in the East. Pacers went another way, intentionally. And it rhymes with ranking. The Pacers are ranking. But now we're just picking it up again here because we've had this conversation time to time. Nikola Jokic misses a month. Shea injured a hamstring and he was out for a little while. The whole talk of the 65 game rule, and now here, just 10 days before the end of the regular season, last night Luka goes down, and no word yet. Shams Charania was on ESPN earlier today and said he's not going to report on the results until they have them, which is what a tremendous amount of restraint, that you're not going to report on the results until the results are in. Man, they don't pay this guy enough at ESPN. But we don't know the results here, but it's a hamstring. And I just got done talking about Peyton Watson. And one thing Shams did say, and it was a pretty good line, hamstring injuries, soft tissue injuries are measured in weeks. So the idea that they're just going to, the Lakers are going to say, oh, Luka's out for Sunday, I think is their next game. And that's it. Probably not. So there's a very good chance that we have now had Cade Cunningham and Luka Doncic fail to reach the 65 game mark. And the impact of it is not well, I thought it would be significant because I thought that the MVP was, my MVP race is between Luka and Wemby. Now, I did say yesterday I would give it to Wemby. And obviously an injury to Luka would cement it. But I thought Luka was in real contention, but ESPN today came out with their straw poll. 100 people voting on a mock ballot. Luka did not receive a single first place vote. Not one. Which I find to be quite shocking. And you know me, I'm not a ranked choice guy. Who's your MVP? First, second, third, fourth, fifth place ballots, I don't care. But since those exist, well, and they don't even have to really exist. You could just say, not worry about second, third, fourth, fifth, and just say that no one thought Luka was the MVP. I thought for sure there would be some people. Now, these aren't necessarily the people who are voting on the MVP, but it's like some of these. I guess we've lost a little faith in our polling data when it comes to like presidential elections. But it's kind of that same, it gives you an idea. Here's 100 people who very closely follow the NBA, watch it, have opinions, Not one of them thought that Luka was the MVP. So even if he ends up getting some votes, he's not this isn't a close race. And Luka's not even next man up. The shocking thing to me is that I'm looking at it and 88 people voted Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as their MVP. 88 out of 100. Now, they did not take into account last night when Shai went off against the Lakers. But this is as recent as this week. I am shocked that 88 out of 100 people said Shai's the MVP. I mean, that's a blowout. That's a rout. And I do not think whether I had, and I thought that Shai was going to win. I've thought it for a very long time that he's going to win. But the idea that it is this, if this margin holds, that's what's surprising. Shai getting 88, Victor gets 8. Because Luka gets 0, Nikola Jokic would be third. And 3 people out of this straw poll voted him as the MVP. So maybe hold tight. Maybe the respect for what Nikola Jokic is doing still exists. And then Jaylen Brown got the remaining MVP vote. And I think certainly Jaylen Brown has a case. Again, it's Shai, it's Victor, it's Jokic, it's Luka, it's Jaylen Brown, and it was Cade Cunningham until he got hurt. But surprising that Shai is so overwhelmingly the favorite. Which, if that's the final margin, when the actual vote happens, then apparently Victor Wembanyama did not change many hearts and minds with his conversation about playing both ends of the floor. But certainly, even if you can say that this is not an indication at all, the real vote cannot include Luka Doncic. Now, there are a couple ways that an exception can be made. And I've read up on a couple of these things. One is supposedly if you suffer a season-ending injury after March 31st, you could be omitted from the 65-game rule. The other thing, which I like better, is that you can file essentially for an extraordinary circumstance. In this case, it would be Luka attending the birth of his child. That is an extraordinary circumstance that caused him to miss 2 games, which at this point makes the difference. I like that. And maybe that's the best. If these, because I'm not one to abolish the 65-game rule. I think it's a good rule. I back up Adam Silver on that. But if a player like Luka, who's going to miss it by just a couple of games, petition the league and say, hey, I was attending the birth of my child, I shouldn't have it against me. Oh, have better timing, Luka. That's on you. Ineligible. No, I think that he should be able to do that. And if that makes the difference and that puts him into the All-NBA and MVP, then I'm cool with that. The idea that if you suffer a season-ending injury after March 31st, I think that's a slippery slope because, like, for instance, Peyton Watson, what's to keep the Denver Nuggets from just not playing him the rest of the season? Does that mean it was a season-ending injury he sustained? Or are the Nuggets, extending his stay on the injured list just to say, you know what, we'll pick it back up in the playoff? That's load management. So I like the other one better. So I hope that if that exists, I hope Luka applies for it and he gets it and he can rightly get the honors that he deserves. Now, if that doesn't happen and Luka becomes ineligible, and by the way, Anthony Edwards also ineligible now, in addition to Cade Cunningham not being eligible, you start to look at the all NBA teams and you wonder, could Jamal Murray slide in to that fifth spot on all NBA first team? We'll pick that conversation up when we return. You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So NBA stars dropping like flies here towards the end of the season, and I would expect the 65-game rule to be brought up yet again, despite Adam Silver defending it vociferously the other day. But it does create an interesting opportunity for one Jamal Murray. And I think it is a foregone conclusion that Jamal Murray is going to make an All NBA team, which he would do for the first time ever. But there's something about being first team All NBA, right? To say 5 best players in the league this season, you were one of them. Now, you cannot, I don't think, make the argument that Jamal Murray has been one of the 5 best players in the NBA this season. This would be born out of the injuries to Cade Cunningham and Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards. Although I think you could argue Jamal Murray over Anthony Edwards. I'm just saying I think you could. But these things happen, right? There are many All NBA teams that were missing a guy that you would be sure would be on it, if not for an injury. So those kind of things happen. I don't think it would be a fraudulent first team All NBA selection for Jamal Murray by any stretch of the imagination. And I also kind of think it would be poetic in a way, because here we have been for a few years, like 5 or more, talking about the health and availability of Jamal Murray. Right? Started with the ACL that he tore in Golden State, missed the rest of that year, missed the entirety of the next year, came back, but like couldn't stay on the court, got challenged by Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. Didn't really seem like there was much of a response to that last season, but now we're seeing Jamal Murray consistently on the court, playing at an all-star and all-NBA level. So I think it would be fitting that Jamal Murray would get in his first all-NBA first-team nod, in large part because he was able to stay healthy, which is a big accomplishment for his career and has led to the success he has had. I don't think Jamal Murray, did what like Aaron Gordon did, where Aaron Gordon just decided one offseason he was going to become a dead-eye three-point shooter. I think this Jamal Murray has always been there. We've seen it. We've just seen it in fits and starts because he hasn't been healthy. But this caliber of player, it's been Jamal Murray since the bubble. So Ray and I were discussing this shortly before the show started. Like, Luka out and out, Cade out, whether you would have Jamal Murray over any of them or not, they're out. All NBA first team right now, easily, Shea, Wemby, Jokic, and Jaylen Brown. Right? With everything, taking everything into consideration, those 4 guys are absolute locks. And if Luka can get this, extraordinary circumstance thing figured out, or find some way to still be eligible, then Luka would be the 5th guy, and that would be the end of it. But if Luka can't, how viable a case does Jamal Murray have? And I think the guy, and I think Ray and I are in a consensus on this, it would be Donovan Mitchell. That would be the guy that would probably get the nod on the 5th spot of that All-NBA first team. Because we looked at a lot of different potential players. I think Donovan Mitchell would get a nod over Jamal Murray, which is kind of funny in a way if you think about it, because those two, because of that bubble series, like somehow always find themselves intertwined with one another. I think Donovan Mitchell would get that fifth spot, and I think he'd deserve it. But there are a couple of other guys, Tyrese Maxey. How about this? Jalen Brunson. Jamal Murray, to me, would be an All-NBA first team over Jalen Brunson. And that tells you how good of a season he has had. And the one thing I was thinking about with Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson's had a good year. The Knicks have had a good year. I would just think, Jalen Brunson, though, his usage rate, right? Because he's their best player. Jamal Murray is not the Nuggets' best player. Their usage rate is about the same. And statistically, they're almost in a dead heat. I take Jamal Murray over Jalen Brunson, and I take him over Tyrese Maxey. Donovan Mitchell, I think I would have to lean Donovan Mitchell. But it's up for debate. It's not an open and shut case. Certainly. Donovan Mitchell averaging 2 more points a game. Rebounds are even. Assists would go to Jamal Murray. True shooting percentage, Jamal Murray by a little bit. Some of the other underlying metrics, Donovan Mitchell's been a better defender this year. So his overall impact, to kind of take the Victor Wembanyama argument, Jamal Murray is kind of hunted on the defensive end. Donovan Mitchell holds his own a little bit better. But it's close. It's really close. And Ray, where are the Cavs in the East right now? Not that this is the be-all, end-all, but if it's just close enough, I'd be curious. Are they the 2 seed right now? Because 4. Nuggets are in the 4 seed, only a game back of the 3 seed. In the tougher conference. Now, I don't know that team success has a whole lot of impact on All-NBA. I think it would be Donovan Mitchell who would have the most who would be most deserving. But not by much. Not by much. And you can look at Jamal Murray and the performances he's put up this season. And also, you can tell what I'm doing here. I'm talking myself into it. I didn't mean to. Ray and I were talking during the break. I'm like, yeah, Donovan Mitchell. But now as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, well, wait a minute here. Let's really think about this. The biggest reason why the Denver Nuggets, let's be fair. Part of the reason why Nikola Jokic is not really in the MVP race is because he missed a month of the season. Right? That has to be part of it. He was out for almost a month of the season. So let's have that go both ways. Why did the Denver Nuggets not just stay afloat, but do pretty dang well without Nikola Jokic? Jamal Murray. Now, I don't know how much an MVP, I don't know that all NBA is a lot of the same criteria as MVP. I think it is very statistically based. Stay tuned. One more Murray flurry, and Ray brought this up before we went on air. This game against the Spurs, this is a showcase game. I know it's not in a great window on a Saturday afternoon, but it's going to be before the Final Four. People are going to be able to see it. It is on national television. Wemby, I think, is playing. Talk about that later. If Jamal Murray puts up one of these huge performances like he did the other night against Utah. And the Denver Nuggets kind of send one of those messages that, hey, don't be so quick to say San Antonio is the rightful best challenger for Oklahoma City. I think Jamal Murray already without that has a legitimate argument to get that. I don't want to say vacated, but I will vacated spot on the All NBA first team if Luka does indeed miss the rest of the regular season and he can't get an exception. But Jamal Murray, even if he fell short of first team for one reason or another, be automatic second team. There is something about being an All NBA first teamer, but All NBA second team for a guy that has not been in that conversation for any All NBA team or any All Star team in his career, still a great accomplishment by Jamal Murray and speaks to how impactful he's been this year. So we'll see what happens with Luka. And again, I'm rooting for Luka to get an exception. If it's the 2 games that he needs, and Ray, you could double check my math. If he gets 2 games back, or however you want to phrase it, and he makes that threshold in the 2 games he's getting back or because he was at the birth of his child, yeah, get Luka. Get Luka All NBA. Vote for him for the MVP. See how that shakes out. He deserves it. But and here's the other part of the Luka thing. I mean, that 3rd seed, oh, it is wide open right now, isn't it? Luka going out, which is why he was a serious MVP candidate, is because he is the biggest reason by far that the LA Lakers are holding on to that 3rd seed. They get blown out by OKC. They lose Luka, and they're only a game up on the Denver Nuggets. If they don't have Luka down the stretch, that 3rd seed is absolutely in play for the Denver Nuggets. And then the longer term thing is, and this goes without saying, if Luka is hampered in the playoffs or does not play, the Lakers are tough. First round, I don't care who they play, they're done. And if they, and we'll get into this a little bit next hour, if they end up playing Minnesota, they're really done. If Luka is less than 100%, so devastating timing for the LA Lakers to have this happen to Luka last night in what was already just a disastrous evening for them as they got absolutely smoked by the Oklahoma City Thunder. Perhaps a message sent by the reigning champions now that we're getting to the finish line. Maybe OKC opening it up a bit and saying, yeah, don't count us out. Don't be too quick to put another team on that throne. 719-24-7, 1313. We will take a break, as we tend to do. Notice I haven't brought up the Rockies at all. It is opening day at Coors Field. I'll say this before we go to break. If you took out the first inning, the Rockies would only be trailing 3-1 in the bottom of the 6th inning. Talk about that. The big matchups tomorrow: Avs and Stars, Nuggets and Spurs, and maybe a position change for Jonah Ellis. Still much more to come. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Great to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show on social media. Anywhere you scroll, really, you can find the show as long as you follow at 740 KVOR or at Extra Sports 1300. And an added benefit of being able to, one, see my extremely, like, this is two pieces what I'm wearing today. So I got to talk about this later. I was at my son's track meet and I was miserable. Not because, I mean, he did great and I'm a proud dad. I'm just saying the wind and the weather, I hate it. But this is a black hoodie with a black blazer. It's a very black getup that I have on today. But that's not why you want to watch the show. Trust me, it's not. Why you want to watch the show is because you can comment and I can share it because Aaron comes in with a couple of comments. Let's start with this one. Aaron says your favorite MPJ should be considered too when it comes to all NBA first team. No, not all NBA first team. Not all NBA. Maybe third team. I haven't really gone that far. So just in case. But this is the better comment from Aaron on X. Kawhi Leonard first team ? Chet Holmgren ? Chet Holmgren, no. Pass. No, thank you. Which, by the way, should be kind of the reason why, part of the argument for Shea. I think his team is really good, but it is a team that is, and look, we're talking about the absolute best of the best in the NBA here. Chet's really good player. It's kind of that the whole is better than the sum of its parts. Right? Chet's a really good player. Jalen Williams is a really good player. I'm not trying to knock anybody on the Oklahoma City Thunder except Lou Dort. But I just feel like I wouldn't take Chet Holmgren over Jamal Murray or some of these other players. Good player. No, Aaron says Chet is like Scottie Pippen and Michael. No, he's not. No, he's not. Chet Holmgren is like Luke Longley to Michael Jordan. A good player. Jalen Williams would be closer to Scottie Pippen, I think. But your the first name is what I really want to focus on. So the conversation, if you're just dropping in and going, well, I'm a little bit lost here. So Luka gets hurt last night, and there's a decent chance that he's going to be ineligible. He's not going to reach that 65-game threshold. And you already have Cade Cunningham who's going to miss it. Anthony Edwards is going to miss it. So you start to kind of look around and say, okay, who's the next guy up here? And I think Jamal Murray has a legitimate case. But Aaron brings up a really good name, and that is Kawhi Leonard. And I asked Ray during the break, why did I gloss over Kawhi? And I know the reason. One, because the Clippers are an afterthought. So maybe that's I don't know, maybe I'm being top of the standings biased here. And I'm like, I'm not really thinking too much about the Clippers. They're the 9 seed. But and I think this is part of what Aaron's intimating by bringing up Kawhi Leonard. They're only in the 9 seed because of Kawhi Leonard. Like, he's been great. Statistically, they match up. Kawhi Leonard would also have more so than Donovan Mitchell. So I think you might be right. But here's in addition to where the Clippers are in the standings, here's the reason why Kawhi Leonard's got to play 3 of the last 5 games. Do we know that he's going to play 3 of the last 5 games? I think that's probably maybe subconsciously what I was thinking, like, oh, Kawhi's not going to reach the threshold. He might. And in that case, I think, Aaron, you're 100% right. I think Kawhi Leonard goes on to that because he's been brilliant. Like, I don't think that the Clippers are much of anything. I think they're going to they might not even get out of the play-in. But Kawhi's been, as he always tends to be, we forget about Kawhi because he's quiet and because the circumvention of the salary cap by the LA Clippers has been largely ignored by the NBA, so we're not talking about that as much. And he's hurt a lot. But if it's purely statistically driven, then Kawhi Leonard over Jamal Murray for sure. And I think that's what all NBA mostly is. I don't think they necessarily think too much about where a team finishes, unless it's a guy who put up big numbers, but like a Michael Porter, put up good numbers. Not really that good of a team. So good on you. Good pull there, Aaron. You could comment on the live stream, and I will on X, on Facebook, and I can display them with Instagram if you're watching there. I just got to read that. I don't have a way to post that. Just keep that information under your hat. Let's stick with basketball and move here to one of the worst ideas maybe ever in sports. And you're going, wow, Ryan. Ever? Yeah. Expanding the NCAA tournament is one of the worst ideas that man has ever come up with when it comes to sports. It already is we don't need the first 4. We don't need it. The committee just used it as an easy out to stick Miami of Ohio in there. Like it's this weird purgatory that they put teams in that they're not super sure about. Like, just decide, are they in the field or are they not? So I already hate the first 4. Absolutely hate it. And now you're going to double down. Like, literally, you're going to have twice as many first 4 games. It won't be the first 4 anymore. It'll be the opening round. As I'm so angry about the NCAA tournament, I knock my ring light off. You're going to have to call it I think they're going to call it the opening round, but they're going to expand. The Sports Business Journal is reporting that they are expected to finalize an expansion of both the men's and the women's tournament to 76 teams soon after this year's tournament. The proposal would add 8 games to the not even doubling it. They're not doubling down, they're tripling down on the first 4, something that we don't really care about. 24 teams playing in an opening round before advancing into the main bracket. This is dumb. And I feel like I have a decent vocabulary. Dumb. What are we doing here? I mean, I'm sorry. There just aren't more than 63 deserving teams of getting into the tournament. There just aren't. I understand it's a different animal than other playoffs, even in college sports. And I understand it, and I love it. I love the NCAA tournament. But there aren't even 63 worthwhile teams to put in the tournament. There aren't. And I'm a proponent of mid-majors getting their conference champions in. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they're undeserving. They're part of the NCAA. You win your tournament, guess what? Congratulations, you're in. That's one of the beauties of college basketball. But they're not expanding it to include, expanding it to compensate because they don't want to give mid-majors automatic bids. They want to include more power teams. They just want the entire Big Ten and the SEC to all be in the tournament and to make their regular season and conference tournament completely and utterly irrelevant. But they're willing to do that because there's more money that comes along with the NCAA tournament than there does their non-conference schedule in December. You're expanding it to give more access to mediocre teams in the Big Ten and the SEC. That is dumb. And it's watering down the product. And it's giving them more of a reason to just stick all of these mid-majors into this first 12 or whatever the heck they're going to call it, so they can bounce them earlier. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to get eliminated. Did you watch the NCAA tournament this year? Mid-major Cinderellas in terms of competing, that day is done. That's not happening anymore. All they have is just the honor and privilege and the bragging rights in their own conference to say, we won this thing and we went to the tournament. But now they're going to not even be in the actual tournament. They're going to be in this weird purgatory and they're going to get beat, because you could certainly make the argument that a mediocre SEC team is better than a lot of the mid-majors. But that's not what this is about. The college football playoff, I'm fine with freezing out the little guy because you only have so many spots. We were at 63. That's plenty. And then they go to, 65. And now it's going to be 75. This is just, it's dumb. Now, by the end of the tournament, like we are right now, it's not going to have an impact. And that's why they can do this. That's why they can do this, because it's watering down the product, but it's not watering down the product when it matters the most. And it matters the most tomorrow. And it matters the most on Monday. And it's not going to hurt the product at all. And this is where, and I've said this about college athletics in the direction it's going. At the highest level, it's going to be as good as you have ever seen. And I believe that. I think, again, I'm not a huge believer in Illinois, but they got here, so kudos to them. But like Arizona and UConn, like the teams, Michigan, the teams at the top of their respective sports, whether it be football or basketball or women's basketball or baseball or whatever sport it might be, it's going to be the best, highest level that you have ever seen. And that's great, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we care the most about. When the championship is on the line, we want the best team. And we're getting that. And we would still get that with this new format. But part of March Madness are mid-majors, are Cinderellas. It's not the most important part. It's an early part of the tournament, and they're making it worse. So it's just, when you look at college athletics and decide for yourself whether things are getting better or worse, it really depends on what end of the spectrum you're in. We're sitting here, we got, DU, Air Force, CSU don't play in power conferences, CU does. So, and especially where we are, it's mid majors, right? So we have a soft spot and we want to see them get their opportunities. But if you're in Big Ten country, you're loving the new direction. And as far as it being right or wrong, and me saying this is wrong, I fully acknowledge I have my own biases where I think that the mid majors should get a legitimate shot to take down the top teams in college basketball. They probably won't, but they deserve that opportunity. And not to get, in these games that no one cares about, just so they can thin out the herd and get more power teams ultimately in the tournament. It's dumb. It's dumb and I hate it, and it's going to happen. The tournament expanding. Final four, speaking of, again, tomorrow, national championship game on Monday. You can hear the games on Extra Sports 1300. Today, actually, we have the women's Final Four, which you could argue, the cream is rising to the top even more in women's college basketball right now with 4 number 1 seeds all there, but they're all great teams. And the one that's coming up at 5 is a doozy with UConn in South Carolina. And then the women's championship game is on Sunday. So and we got Frozen 4 next week. So a lot of college champions being crowned over the next week or so on Extra Sports 1300. For now, we'll take a break and have more of Drive Time Sports on Extra Sports 1300 as well as 740 KVOR. now, Luka Doncic is out indefinitely. This being reported by Shams Charania moments ago. The statement from Luka's agent, Bill Duffy. This season, Luka has... Oh, I don't care. I don't care about the... To ensure that Luka's incredible accomplishments this season are rightly honored and he can be considered for the league's end-of-season awards, we intend to apply for an extraordinary circumstances challenge to the 65-game rule for exactly what I brought up, the birth of his child. And I hope that he gets it. But here's the bigger thing. He's out indefinitely. He will miss the remainder of the season, regular season, and his status is uncertain beyond that. And you can compare it exactly to Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson, hamstring, and I know like the severity is what's the difference here, but it's you have two hamstring injuries here. Peyton Watson is week to week with some hope he'll return for the regular season. Luka is bye-bye to the regular season. Bill Duffy, his agent, is going to apply for an exemption to the 65-game rule. And it's uncertain beyond that. And here's the thing. As you look at the NBA standings, because if you're a Laker fan, here's what you're hoping. You're hoping you get a favorable matchup and Luka doesn't have to play in the first round and you can still get out and then get Luka back. Here's the problem. The Lakers right now, as the 3 seed, would play Minnesota. And Anthony Edwards' status is a little bit up in the air as well, but not as much as Luka's is now. That's not a good matchup when you don't have Luka Doncic. So could we see a little, let's call it, jockeying for position? Between the Lakers and the Nuggets. Who wants to play the Timberwolves? Neither one of them do. They both want the Rockets. Now, the Lakers, the way they've been playing lately up until last night, and you can throw the Nuggets in here too, have won 7 in a row. Like, they're both going for the 3 seed. Clearly. But I'm just more talking if you're a fan of either team more. I don't think there's going to be, I think it's just going to play itself out. The Denver Nuggets are now healthier, or their best players are healthy. The Lakers' best player isn't. I think it's going to naturally play itself out. I think that the Nuggets are moving up to the 3rd seed. But if you're a fan of the Denver Nuggets, you would much rather see Houston than Minnesota. If Anthony Edwards is going to be available for the postseason, which is, a little bit in doubt, but it seems like the prognosis for Ant is a little bit better. He's already dipped below the 65-game. He can't get the 65 games even if he came back. So I don't think it's because he's necessarily going to miss the rest of the regular season. But be that as it may, I think you're looking at the Nuggets now overtaking the Lakers for the 3rd seed. There's no way with the team separated by a game that the Lakers are going to stay above the Denver Nuggets. There's no way, because now you looked at the schedule before and you said, well, Lakers only really got a couple of tough games. Well, now there are games that you didn't think were tough before because they had Luka, that now you're looking at like, I don't know. I got to see the Laker schedule here. See, who says the end of the NBA season isn't fun? So Lakers have Dallas on Sunday. There's a perfect one. Lakers with Luka, thoughts and prayers to Cooper Flagg and company. Luka's not playing. Dallas could beat them. Then they play the Thunder. That was already going to be a difficult game again. They play the Warriors. Steph Curry's coming back. You host the Suns. Again, without Luka, are you better than Phoenix? And then you close out with the Jazz, which the Lakers could play with the Laker girls and beat the, Utah Jazz. Not because the Laker girls can't ball or that the Utah Jazz are terrible. It's because the Utah Jazz will probably sit all of their play. But I don't see how the Nuggets, with the way they're playing right now, and they're not going to go unbeaten the rest of the way. But I would be shocked at this point if the Nuggets can't overtake the Lakers. And if you're talking about the first round, yeah, Minnesota is not the matchup you would rather have as opposed to playing the Houston Rockets. But if you can get by Minnesota, which you've won the season series, you get San Antonio and not OKC, which is kind of what I've been looking at. Not so much the first round, because I think that the Denver Nuggets can beat either Houston or Minnesota. It's been, can we get the Thunder in the Western Conference Final and set up that playoff rematch? That would be putting it in its proper place. And now you could do that because you would have San Antonio in round 2. You'd be on the opposite side of the bracket as OKC. And that's why I've been saying you hope that the Rockets end up being the 6th seed. But I think it's more, if you're a Nuggets fan, it's more about being on the opposite side of the Thunder. So at least when you match up with them, regardless of how you think it's going to turn out, at least it's deciding who goes to the NBA final, which is the way it should be. But I could also say, shouldn't the way it should be that the Nuggets face the Timberwolves? Like, shouldn't they have to exercise those demons in the playoff? So the fates are interceding a little bit here. And look, I hate that Luka's hurt because he's had a brilliant season and he's completely changed the way you look at this Lakers team. But if you are only focused on the Denver Nuggets, you get the 3rd seed, see what happens between the Rockets and Wolves, who are separated by a game, but you get to, finish the whole Timberwolves thing the way it should be finished, not during the regular season, but the playoffs. We have a incredibly compelling second round matchup with San Antonio. So that would be a matchup of the two teams that many people have debated, as we have throughout the season, who is the biggest threat to OKC. Nuggets have a chance to prove that by beating Wemby and the Spurs, and then that would set up a Western Conference final against OKC. That feels like the right path for Denver. I'm not saying the path of least resistance, but in terms of storylines and in terms of the unquantifiable, the way it ought to be, Wolves, Spurs, Thunder kind of feels like the way it ought to be for the Denver Nuggets, no? Take your thoughts on it, 719-247-1313. Now, speaking of the Spurs, Nuggets get them tomorrow. Victor Wembanyama sat out last night and is expected to be a full go, and we will get, and there's a couple of different levels to this, right? The most important thing is the Nuggets in a showcase game against the San Antonio Spurs, the team that everyone's been saying, not Denver being the biggest threat to OKC, but San Antonio. So Nuggets have a chance to change the perception a little bit here. That's the most important. And now the third seed is wide open. But that would be the case regardless of who the Nuggets host tomorrow. And then you have the added layer, which is we finally this season get to see Jokic versus Wemby. And we've been literally waiting the entire season to see these two match up. Now, the numbers aren't pretty for Wemby against Jokic. Now, Wemby gets his 25, 14 and a half, 15 rebounds, 4 block shots. Not too shabby. But Nikola Jokic has absolutely dominated him. 37 points, 11 rebounds, 8.5 assists. Victor Wembanyama making his MVP case because of what he does on the defensive end. Here's a good chance to cement that case. That's going to be awesome. Jokic and Wemby finally at long last. Tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. Some perceptions could be changed a little bit here in this game. With as tight as everything feels, both as far as the MVP, but also as far as the West is concerned and the perception of who's the biggest threat to take out OKC. Not who's the best team, that's still OKC, but who's the best equipped to potentially take them down. Wemby locking down Nikola Jokic tomorrow, I in a Spurs win, I think maybe a 1 or 2 MVP votes would go. And it shouldn't be based on one game, but I'm just saying if there's a voter that's on the fence, Victor locking down Nikola Jokic, like that's enough to tip you over onto one side of that fence for sure. So that'll be 1 o'clock tomorrow. That'll be good. 719-247-1313. Again, the breaking news of the afternoon. Luka Doncic will miss the remainder of the regular season for the Lakers, but his status for the postseason is uncertain, which is just terrible news if you're an LA Lakers fan. Take your thoughts on it coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. in baseball. Like, it just doesn't, Fugazi, it just doesn't exist. Rockies would be in a 3-1 deficit here in the ninth inning of their home opener. Unfortunately, I don't think that's how it necessarily works. And so the Rockies are actually down 10-1 in the bottom of the ninth inning. As this is how, you want to know how the first inning went for the Colorado Rockies? Let us go all the way back. So, ground out, single, or wait, here we go. Double, walk, single, double, strikeout, home run, double, ground out, single, ground out. 3-run home run by Jesse Marsh was the big blow of the inning. As Michael Lorenzen giving that up. But since the Rockies have really settled into things today, and if they can, the run to get even with the Phillies after the first inning is at the plate currently. So a home run here, and if you ignore the first inning, it's a tie ball game, ladies and gentlemen. Look, this is how it's going to have to be with the Colorado Rockies. I am trying, willingly trying, but there are going to be. I mean, the last couple of days is exactly going to be the experience here. I think because of the Rockies' aggressive style, especially when it comes to on the base path, there are going to be days where they're going to steal wins. I mean that in a couple of different ways. Steal wins, as in there's no team that you look at as worse than the Colorado Rockies. But also steal, as in it will be the stealing of bases that helps them win. And you saw that the other day in Toronto. Heck, they won 2 out of the 3 games. And good on them. But right around the bend is a game like today against one of the best teams in all of baseball, playing at Coors Field with Schwarber and Marsh and Harper, and they're going to make it a launch pad. Not to mention that Bryce Harper has a lot of contempt in his heart for the Rockies organization. I think he called them a clown organization in the not-so-distant past. This is the Rockies' experience. You're going to have to shrug off some of these performances and say, you know what, they weren't that good to begin with. And then just marvel at their ability to win any games. I think that's really how you got to look at it. But yeah, Rockies with this loss will fall to 17-17 all time in home openers. So there's that. What else did I want to get to today? Nice to see Dan Hurley about a week later owning up to going forehead to forehead with the referee. Like, I like Dan Hurley, and he's a great coach, but, like, dude, being clowns, like, just admit that what you did was wrong. No, none of us wanted him to get teed up. But a little contrition, a little acknowledgement that, hey, given the fact that I berate these people all the time in every game, like, if I'm the one that's in the wrong, maybe I should say something. And Dan Hurley saying he's not He said, I'm not a victim. I've done everything. I did what I did. We don't allow okay. Wait a minute. No, never mind. He's not. Dan Hurley didn't. Where's the owning up that ESPN is saying? I'm reading this now. I'm not a victim. I've done everything. I did what I did. We don't allow victims in our program. What are you talking about, Dan Hurley? You're in the wrong. The victim is the referee that had to show restraint when you went forehead to forehead with him. Dan Hurley, come on. He makes it really difficult to like him sometimes, doesn't he? So never mind. What a misleading headline from ESPN, although I'm not totally shocked by that. Owns out. You don't up to anything. Which is a problem, by the way, that he's not owning up to it, I think. What else? Oh, I wanted to get to this. So much coming out of the last couple of days in Arizona where George Paton and Sean Payton were both out there and for the owners, coaches, GM meetings, whatever they're called, the day drinking event that apparently it is, that this kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. And it was a really good piece by Nick Kosmider, who covers the Broncos for The Athletic. Sean Payton mentioned that Jonah Ellis would be playing a little bit at inside linebacker this year for the Denver Broncos. And it certainly speaks to Jonah Ellis's versatility, but I think it also speaks to how I wouldn't rule out an inside linebacker for the Broncos with one of their first couple of picks. Now, they're so spread out. They don't pick till late in the second round, and then I don't think they're on the board again till the fourth round. But George Paton hinted at potentially moving up when he said, quote, that doesn't mean we won't move up, end quote. But if there's an inside, it does speak to Jonah Ellis's versatility, but it also speaks to how thin the Broncos now are. And I get it. They can't keep all three, Stranad, Singleton, and Dre Greenlaw. You just couldn't, not because you couldn't use all three, but because all three would feel like they deserve to take the majority of the snaps. And you can only give those to two. So I understand why all three couldn't stay, but you still need depth. So if the opportunity presents itself, because Jonah Ellis, it's a player you want to see more of, and I've been saying this. I want to see more Jonah Ellis. I love to see him more as a pass rusher, but talking about depth, the Broncos have plenty of depth at outside linebacker. So I'll take Jonah Ellis playing on the inside if it means that he's out on the field a little bit more. But it does, I think, as Nick points out, kind of hint at maybe where the Broncos are going to be looking here. It's a little bit of an admission of they're thin at that spot, which they are. I mean, just look at their depth chart. They are thin there. So as you're trying to figure out where the Broncos may go, and look, there's so many picks. I know they have this draft board all put together already, and they probably have a decent idea of who's going to be available. It's still so much has to happen before the Broncos are even close to being on the clock. So maybe somebody falls. Maybe the guy they're looking at inside linebacker doesn't make it to them. I think it's certainly, whether it's early or late in the draft, I think you can mark down that the Denver Broncos are going to take an inside linebacker. They need the numbers. And maybe the guy doesn't play over Jonah Ellis. But it just be if you're willing to move somebody to a different position, sure, it speaks to how you feel about the guy and his versatility, but it also speaks to we got to get some guys in there in that spot. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, here's the ultimate thing for Von Miller desperately trying to rejoin the Denver Broncos. Does Von want to play inside linebacker? Because I say sign him up tomorrow. They have a need there. But it also cuts both ways, doesn't it? Right? So they need bodies at inside linebacker. And Jonah Ellis is capable of playing in there. Great, but let's look at the other side. It speaks to what they think of Jonah Ellis and that they want to see more Jonah Ellis on the field, as I think you should if you're a Denver Broncos fan. But they can't get him the snaps because of Cooper and Benito. So doesn't that kind of solidify my point that I've been making with the Von Miller thing? Why in the world would you bring this guy in? You don't need him. And besides, if you give Von Miller money, then you will have no money left over for Aaron Rodgers. And what are you going to do then? You'd be in a real predicament if you're the Denver Broncos, not being able to bring Aaron Rodgers in, make him the backup to Bo Nix. Good news on the Bo Nix front as well. He's been fully cleared for whatever the next phase of he's cleared. Next time the Broncos are on the field, Bo Nix will be, which is obviously great news for them. Big weekend in sports, and I've said this is the best part of the sports calendar. I love this time. Women's Final Four today, which is actually coming up here in 6 minutes on Extra Sports 1300. Got the men's Final Four tomorrow, women's national championship Sunday, men's national championship on Monday. Tomorrow, both the Avs and the Nuggets are in action in big-time showcase games. Avs and Stars, Nuggets and Spurs. Mikko Rantanen playing? I don't know, but Parker Kelly, that's the guy right now to watch in that matchup. He has been on a tear, and Jared Bednar's moving him up. He's now on the third line with Nazem Kadri. So enjoy it. And I have switchbacks tomorrow. So hopefully I'll talk to you then. Appreciate the interaction and your patronage. Enjoy your evening. If you're listening on KVOR, my thoughts on the latest with Peyton Watson's injury. Have a good night.